almost wish we were recording this.
We are. We've been recording for 25 minutes. You were talking about the health stuff, and I was like, screw it. I'm turning on the recording. This is too good. And you kept going. I figured you knew that we were recording, but here
No,
you did.
I never even looked.
That's funny.
Like, there are cycles in this world. I mean, the sun rises and goes away, the waves come in low tide, high tide. Those are cycles that are happening even in our bodies, So if you feel like you're not getting anywhere, this I'm saying to my brother, if you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, maybe it's your body, your creator, something is telling you just to slow down and relax. Just this is a different period. But while I'm here, I want to. I actually really ultimately want to help people get to that place of
peace
and being present for themselves, to be present in yourself, but also be present to the people that you're there trying to help. Or not even thinking beyond trying to help, but if you are present, they can feel it.
Isn't that funny? I feel like there's a lot of time, like several people are going through my head right now, and I'm just remembering conversations with them where it's so clear that they're not present. And some stick out more than others, but we fool ourselves into thinking that if we're not present, we can at least portray the idea that we are present, and we won't, and we'll fool them. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Because you can always tell.
Yeah. I think you can really tell through a phone conversation. Certainly, if you're on Zoom with a group of people, you can look at certain people and you can tell they're not really there. They're not fully there because they're not. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should be. You shouldn't be so arrogant to say I really know. But it
Yes.
appears to like that looks like they're fooling around with their phone or
right.
I think the AI is really great with this note taking stuff because you can just let it run, be present in the meeting, and then you can go back and look at it.
Yep.
All that. So
isn't it crazy? Oh man, I feel like anytime those two letters get brought up, AI, I want to launch into so many different conversations and sub conversations within it because the implications of it are insane to me. We talk about becoming your own banker. We talk about owning the banking function as it pertains to you and your life. We talk about all that is just extreme ownership, right? And then AI comes on and we get to subcontract a lot of the things that we would typically do out to AI and allow them to do it for us. Hey, you could take notes for us. Well, guess what? You're going to be a really sucky note taker in here about 5 or 6 years. Like you're going to lose that skill. We don't think of it as a skill, but you're going to lose it. You're going to lose that part of your brain.
Yes. You're totally right. Like, and there's so many things like that, like if it seems like it's going to make something better, like just for instance, I'm thinking of grounding, this whole thing about grounding your body and all this stuff. The sneaker, with the synthetic sole, that was so supposedly one of the greatest inventions of all time, because everybody was going to be able to be safe and not hurt themselves and all this kind of stuff. And what it did was kind of like AI. It screwed us all up. It took away a healing property, a balance property that we had evolved through generations upon generations of connecting to the earth.
Huh.
And the negative electrons that the earth is filled with, and when we step on it, it floods into our bodies, keeps us healthy. It allows, melatonin is better, our collagen is better, all kinds of things, and healing properties of it all. All these diseases that are running rampant now, really 150 years ago were not as prevalent as they are now. And it's, for one thing, up until I think it was back in the 60s, 70s, that's when they came up with the synthetic soles. But
Hmm.
prior to that, they were all leather, and leather is conductive, so you were still getting it.
I,
Um, it's
I didn't know all
crazy.
that. That is crazy.
It's crazy. And there's a thing, yeah. So anyway, it's the point is that you come across these technologies that we think that are going to enhance our life experience, and actually they're, you won't be able to, might not even be able to write.
Yeah, yeah, right. You lose that skill. I mean, how many people have I don't know. I just hypothesize on a lot of this stuff, but you
Yeah,
look back at people who were educated. I mean, it seemed like there was fewer quote unquote educated people back then. 50 years, 100 years ago, more and more people are educated now. But look at the penmanship of across the board. Penmanship's gone down. There's not
yeah,
among educated people, like there's just not this desire for any kind of artistic portrayal of one's thoughts on paper. um
yeah. I would
it's really
agree.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
my
now we don't even want to do it. We want to have other people or other things, AI, do it for us. It's
yeah.
interesting.
We don't even want to write. Yeah, although there's this. I think we still do, but everybody's. It's my penmanship is terrible. I'm left-handed, and I was at that time, in 1960, 61, 62, 63, there came up this thought that left-handed people were screwed up in the head and they needed to learn to write right-handed. So they were trying to make me learn to write
Uh-huh.
right-handed, and it screwed up my penmanship on the left. And so I eventually they gave up. After a couple of years, with first and second grade, and they said, "Oh, geez," So it messed up my penmanship. My parents had beautiful penmanship.
Really.
Oh God, my mother. Oh Jesus, just to look at it now, and I see pieces of paper that she wrote stuff on. It's like, holy! I wish I could. Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, uh, we think that we're moving forward and evolving and all this, and actually we're evolving.
Yeah, we're just outsourcing a lot of our things for other people to do for us.
Well, hey,
Makes us
hey,
more efficient right now, but not necessarily increases our aptitude for the future.
yes, and this is pinging right on what we're going to talk about is, well, what we are talking about, the whole banking
Uh-huh.
function. You know, prior to the Federal Reserve and all these other things that have come into the world, people used to, as we know, had a little tin can, or they had a hole in the ground inside the house because they were living on a dirt floor, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. And they were saving and making deals and buying land themselves, like you do this and I'll do this, and so we've even lost how to even think about it like that. It's
Yeah.
like, God.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We're not doing anything from a banking perspective. We're not taking care of it, right? Well, that is something we've been outsourcing for a very, very long time. And
Yeah.
that is why the people who take the banking function back into their control, they get ahead. Whether they use whole life insurance or something else, they get ahead. And it's just because nobody else is doing that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like they're not fighting the headwind of 18% interest on their credit card.
Yep.
Jesus, now I see 29%. Oh,
I've seen 34. So,
oh God. Yeah, the highest I've seen is 29, but that's
yeah.
like shocking.
Yep. It is crazy. So, one thing you mentioned interest, and I want to touch on this before we hop into our topic for today. But I talked with my preferred insurance company this morning, and I have been digging into the interest stuff because of our conversation. Um, on Saturday, our recording that we did,
Yeah.
Jay looking into all of this, the arbitrage we talked about, how is interest calculated, all that stuff. Did you know, and we may have already covered this, but I got confirmation this morning that interest is when you make loan repayments every single month. Let's say you've got an outstanding balance of $5,000 and you're paying $500 every single month to pay this thing off in whatever that is, 10 months or something. $500 a month goes to principal. Nothing goes to interest.
Hmm.
Nothing. When you're making those loan repayments, 100% of it goes to interest. It goes to principal. Now, your interest, it accrues daily. So it's assessed daily, right? But it doesn't get charged until the anniversary or the end of until the end of the loan. What's really, really, really cool about that is you're not getting charged interest on interest. 100% of your payments
Right.
are going directly towards principal and bringing your principal down. If interest is accrued and assessed daily and you're paying that off daily or monthly, let's just say monthly, then 5% on 5,000 is a bigger number than 5% on 4,500, right? So the amount that's accruing is lower as you make payments to it. So your
Oh,
interest
right.
by volume, when it comes down to when the interest is actually charged, is less than what the interest rate was for that given year.
So that's different than a commercial bank
Oh, 100%.
because
Yeah.
they're doing it on a cumulative daily basis of the interest, right? I mean, in that you send
They
in
charge
500.
interest monthly. They charge
Yeah.
interest monthly. Yep.
So you send in $500 and they might only put 450 to, let's just for numbers, 450 to the principal and 50 to the interest.
Right.
So that slows down the repayment.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And so in the following month, you're going to get charged interest based on that outstanding balance of, instead of now 4,500, it is 4,550, right? Because 50 of your previous month's payment went to interest, not to principal.
Right.
So yeah, the commercial banks make a lot more money on interest than insurance companies do, even though they're charging the same rate of interest, right?
Yep. 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 The so it's almost like for 12 months, like just say for instance you took the loan out the day after your anniversary re-upped, restarted.
Okay.
You know, what is today? February 22nd. February 21st was your anniversary. February 22nd, you take out a loan. You have an interest-free loan. No. Well, let me just finish the thought. You correct me. You have an interest-free loan for 12 months. And then you have
Yes.
the opportunity to pay that interest so it doesn't roll in.
Right.
Phew.
Yeah, people talk about simple interest, and when you're talking about a simple interest loan, that means that you take out a loan, let's just call it 20 grand, and you're paying the interest only payments You're not paying back your principal, right? That's a simple interest loan, right?
Oh,
So
or could you call it interest only
it's same
loan?
thing. Yeah, same idea, right? So an interest only loan. This is a principal only loan for 12 months. You get charged the interest at the very end, right?
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
Who cares?
yeah,
you
yeah,
you literally have been contributing to the principal every month that you've been paying that off, not to interest. Uh,
yeah. And this is
that
this is
philosophy, you just get so far ahead.
this is this is also, I think, why when you get to when you get past that year, third, fourth, fifth year, whatever it is, where you cross over, just say you're sending 20,000 a year to your life insurance policy, and you could do it over the monthly, whatever. But say it's annual 20,000, and you take a loan and you start paying it back, and you're paying, and now you're past that time frame where that 20,000 you send each year is showing up as growth in the cash value. You follow what I mean? Like the first 1, 2, 3 years, there's the startup costs, so it goes
Right,
kind of
right,
like,
right.
it goes like this and then starts to go up. So in the fourth year, it was for us at the end of the fourth year on my wife's policy. From that point on, and it was probably a few days before, it might have been 15, 20 days before the anniversary that it changed over, because it actually changed over and went just a little bit that fourth year, at the end of the fourth year. Now we're into the fifth year. Everything that we send shows up plus
Mm.
in interest. So my very first client started a policy, I think like maybe 4 to 6 weeks before we did. Very first client. I had a conversation with him the other day. We went for a walk, and because he's here in town, and we went for a walk, and he says it's amazing to see that I'm paying back my loan. I send $500, and then the cash value jumps by $525. I said, that's got to be the interest that's growing on a daily basis inside of it, and every time you do that, boop, it
Yeah.
jumps up.
So I want to be really careful here um, with the word interest, because life insurance policies don't grow at interest.
Oh,
They don't grow at interest, because that is not what happens. And I want to cover that in this conversation today, and kind of delineate the difference between a life insurance policy designed for cash value, whether you want to call it an IBC policy or a high cash value policy or whatever.
yeah.
Um, we'll call it an infinite banking policy. Want to separate that from your traditional investments. All, like, so many different investments, they can all be categorized in kind of an umbrella thing, but IBC is outside of that umbrella, and I want to explain why. And I think that'll help with this understanding of growing at interest within the IBC policies. And I totally hear where you're coming from. I just think that words matter. Words have power,
Oh, definitely. Words totally matter.
and the words we associate with things dictate the way that we think about them.
Right. So the words matter, but also the definition
Right,
of the word, because whoever controls the definition is controlling the conversation.
right.
It's the definition of the word. And so you might even actually explain that, what you mean by the word interest over here and what you mean by interest over here, because
Yep,
that's really what matters.
I agree with you. Um, I'm looking.
Huh. So I'm really curious to hear this, because this is totally new to me. I always had the understanding that there was interest and growing, and then at the annual anniversary, you got the dividend popped in.
Yeah,
You know
and
that.
it's very easy, because that's the way that we typically think of investments, is through, like, it grows at interest, right? You've got to 8% 8% growth, rate of return, interest, whatever. Like there, all of those words can kind of like fall under the same vague category in terms of growth. Interest is generally speaking economically referred to the price that you pay to borrow money. Um, and on the flip side is the return earned on an investment. So if interest is the return earned on an investment on the positive side, then that would indicate that if you're talking about an IBC policy, that IBC policy is an investment. So by using the word interest growth or interest as it relates to the growth of the policy, we are classifying the IBC policy as an investment. I will never do that. It's incorrect. An
Well,
IBC policy is not an investment.
right. Yes, I think I understand that, and probably after today I'll understand it better. But interest is also, so if somebody puts money into a savings account and there's interest growth there. People don't typically think that that's an investment. They're, I
Mm.
think most people are thinking I'm saving, and it is growing, but obviously it's not growing tremendously, but it's growing. Do you think that people think of that as an investment?
If they put it in a savings account versus a CD account, if they put it in a CD account, they'd view it as a investment.
Investment,
If
yes,
it
but
was in a savings account, growing at interest, they probably wouldn't view that as an investment. They just say, "Sweet, my money's growing."
yeah.
But again, does that make it accurate? I personally don't think so.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that you might distinguish between that if you can. I don't mean if it comes up,
Yeah, yeah,
because some people would think of they might think that we're contradicting ourselves by saying, well, there's interest in a savings account. That's not an investment, but this is over here in a CD. It is.
yeah. Well, I agree with you. I agree with you, and that's why
It
it's
might
so
be.
hard with economic terms because I feel like a lot of the economic terms that we use are muddled. You know, they're not super clear. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about Ryan Griggs is he's very clear about the word capital. Nelson was very clear about the word capital and it had a very specific definition, right? And that was so important and it cannot be used out of that context. It doesn't mean anything else. Capital is, you know, I probably am going to ruin it, but capital is the tradable value of an asset, right?
Say that
And
again. Say that again.
capital is the
Yeah.
tradable value of an asset.
Capital is the tradable. Capital
V-
is the tradable.
Value of an asset.
Ah.
So
And that's what our forefathers understood.
our forefathers, as in,
Me, as in, great grandfathers back in the day,
oh,
they understood that.
right. But now,
I've never actually heard it said like that, or maybe I have. I'm sure I've listened to Ryan Griggs many times, and
have you ever
not
read the
as
book
much. Not.
1984 by George Orwell?
Oh yeah, long. Yeah.
Every
Back,
time I'm digging into stuff like this, that's what it makes me think of is they've got old speak and they've got new speak, and the new speak is just fewer words that mean more things, and the definitions become increasingly broad of each word. And it's like, okay, we don't need to use this word anymore because this word over here encapsulates that to a degree. And it's happening in our culture, and it's really sad because as it's happening in our culture, we use fewer words to clarify the things that are important. And if we have fewer words to clarify them, that means we have a lower resolution when we're thinking about them. If there's lower resolution, lower clarity, then how can we really understand what we're talking about? I think it's a big problem. So yeah, capital is one of those words that, a lot of people view it as money that you make on an investment. I've heard that from clients. I ask every one of my clients, what would you define money as? Every single person says something different. What would you define an asset as? Every single person says something different. What would you define capital as? Every single person says something different. These are very simple words that we hear very frequently, and few of us have an accurate understanding of what those are. If you can't define money or an asset or capital properly, how can you think about each of those things properly and put them in the right category? Right? And
Right.
that's why I say infinite banking is a philosophy. Infinite banking is an approach towards life, and it's one that's very clear, that we use very specific words to define things so that there's no confusion with the rest of the financial world.
Yeah. Yeah, man. This, I almost wish we were recording this.
We are. We've been recording for 25 minutes. You were talking about the health stuff, and I was like, screw it. I'm turning on the recording. This is too good. And you kept going. I figured you knew that we were recording, but here
No,
you did.
I never even looked.
That's
I'm
funny.
like, oh wow, this is, well, it'll be a really good one for me, and yourself maybe, to go back and listen to again because,
Authentic.
oh wow,
Okay.
thank you, for
Yes.
recording it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I,
to
I,
all of
sat,
our listeners that just had, I know.
I sat down because I didn't think we were recording, and my legs were like, oh, maybe I should just sit down.
That's hilarious. I know. I was
But
like, why are you sitting down in the middle of our recording? That doesn't make sense. Oh my gosh.
Well, I had no idea that we were
Yeah,
recording, but
that's
yeah,
funny.
the words, yeah, and there again, like we were talking, that we think that we're moving ahead and getting more sophisticated or whatever, and yeah, we're devolving. I said, and that was a word that I'd heard. I don't remember when, but yeah. Uh, wow. Yeah. So delineating interest inside a policy is critical. So yeah. So my client, we're walking down the street, and he says, "Yeah, I send $500, and it pops up 525." Ah, wow.
And you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's interest growth, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's so easy. That is how insurance agents communicate it. You're not the only one. So many of us do.
No,
I
no.
probably would. I
Yeah,
probably would if it wasn't for my mentor, Ryan,
yes.
explaining it all to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's, man, it's so important. This is why Nelson always talked about the noise, the getting noise canceling headphones for the financial world is so important, because there's so much crap out there that seems legit, that as we
Yeah.
hear it, or we may not even be paying attention to it, we just are hearing it in the background, and it's always being whispered in our ear: interest, 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 rate of return, return on investment, return on investment. Those are the words we hear all the time. Mutual funds, stocks, companies, public, IPO, all these different things that we're hearing all the time
Yeah.
are just being part of our brain. That's the noise that Nelson was saying. We have to get that out of our life. We have to remove that. And if you don't, then you start processing information through those words. There's a reason why marketing is so important for companies, is because everything's subtle behind the head. It's all subconscious, right? And if we're not paying attention to what is being subconsciously infused into our minds, then we'll get duped, and we will have a misinterpretation of the entire financial picture. And that's what's wrong with America. That's what's wrong with Americans, is we're misinterpreting what's going on from a financial perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's probably going on in other free countries as well, over in the UK and all
Oh,
that.
everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, that it's not that we're well, I think that's why it's so important, I think, to study history. How did this particular word come about?
Mm.
That'd be an interesting thing. Look back and see where the word interest came from. Do you know that? Maybe you know
I,
that.
I don't know that. No, that would be a fascinating study.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because somewhere somebody, right? So all the words somebody coins them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wonder where that'd be
So,
fascinating to dig
uh,
into that. Probably ask Ryan and he would know.
yeah, right. I think back to the Bible. When he was when God was commanding the Israelites not to charge uh, interest at not to charge usury on money lent, right? And I think that's probably where it started, and then it kind of morphed from there. But that's just where I go
Hmm.
to immediately in my own mind. But
Yeah, yeah.
let's hop into this into the topic for today. We're 30 minutes into this recording. I think we may as well jump into the topic.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'd
um,
like I'd like to hear yeah the I don't want to call it the punchline, but the truth of it.
yeah.
Because I honestly I have been saying that from the beginning,
Hmm.
that it was interest from the beginning because that's what I was told.
Yep. And again, Nelson, the man, the legend, my goodness, cannot respect that man anymore. He said exactly that. Our perception of life insurance, I should say, he said, our understanding of life insurance is based on someone else's misunderstanding of life insurance. That doesn't even escape the NNI, the Nelson Nash Institute, or the infinite banking world, or the high cash value life insurance world. We, even as agents, don't understand everything to the degree that we need to understand it. And it's extremely prevalent. And we think we do, but it's just because
Yeah,
of the training we've received.
yeah, and it's from who we're receiving it from. Like when we were talking about Jay and his experience with the agent that set
Mm-hmm.
up his policy, and he said he was told that he was going to gather the interest,
Yeah.
and that wasn't true. And I said, well, you can't blame, put it all on the agent. He may just have been parroting what he had been told.
Right.
Maybe he didn't understand. I knew that wasn't the case, but that was just it's one thing I do understand about it. But that's what I've been going down this path for about the same time as you. Maybe you've been doing it a little longer, but that was I hear that all the time, and I hear it. I think I'm going to have to go back and look, but I think I hear it from people that are considered like really top in the field of life insurance.
Right. Yep, you probably do, because interest is the word that everyone wants to hear. I was listening to a podcast, Banking with Life, an episode that they just recently did, and they were talking about audience capture and how a lot of creators, content creators, are producing content that their audience wants to hear based on their audience feedback, all that kind of stuff. And so rather than becoming the teacher who is bringing the audience to a new philosophy and a new understanding of everything, they're captured by what their audience wants to hear, and they are actually the ones that are changing the way they communicate and what they communicate about, the clarity with which they communicate, so that it is more easily received by the audience. Who's the teacher there? you know
Right,
like
right,
it. And
right,
that's super prevalent in our world today. And so if the audience wants to hear interest, and you were mentioning a bunch of other agents, that are, struggling to increase their clientele, all that kind of stuff, all they want is to talk to more people about infinite banking. They don't really know how, because they're using infinite banking language, probably, right? And if they're using the language that Nelson spoke with, it's the accurate language, but it's not the language or the verbiage that is desired by the masses, right?
Right,
And so we have a
right.
huge disconnect here that makes it like not marketable. That's the bridge every IBC agent has to cross. They have to figure out, how am I going to bring people who don't understand the words that they're even supposed to be listening for to a point of understanding what those words mean, and how do I help them disregard the other words that are just fluff? That's
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, no, what they're doing when they do what, as you said, the audience then becomes the teacher of
Yeah.
the agent, if you will. That agent has forgotten who they are in their gut, in their soul, and they have transformed their, I don't want to say, how do I want to say this? They have transformed themselves into something they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that I talk to people about and I help people with is a thing called the blueprint process. And it's all about uncovering, unfolding the gifts that we were given when we came into this body, in this life. Our creator gave us this. So like when the day we were born, most people think, the day we were born, I have a different belief about that, but the day we were born, a problem was solved on the planet, because we have a unique set of gifts that we were given by our creator. And to be really who we are is to know that, a lot of times we forget it, right? Or we say, now kind of talking about the audience as the teacher, you're giving yourself up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's
So it's,
really sad.
yeah.
And
So I love what you're saying about the words and all this stuff, because I didn't know this, and I am listening to people that it seems as though, they've been in the business 35, 40 years,
yeah.
and they're using these words, and I'm like, oh wow. So I'm the student today.
uh
That I want to know this. And I think maybe, I don't know if you were recording when when I said this earlier, is that we're looking for people that are open-minded, that are curious, that really want to know, that are that they come to this and they say, I really want to try to understand this.
yeah.
And that was something that Jay had said. He said, I really want to understand this. And I'd like to be able to express it to him in a way that he catches it. Something goes ding, ding, okay, I get it. But
Yeah.
you gotta. So I'm so blessed that you and I are talking.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it fun how we have different experiences that we can bring to the table, and we can grow in our conversations. I mean, this is what, our sixth recording, and I've already grown tremendously just because of the uniqueness of these conversations causes me to go out and do research in things that I thought I had total clarity on. Now I have to
Yes.
actually go and nail that in. I might have been 95% of the way there, but that extra 5%, that could mean I was wrong or I was right. And until I'm 100%, man, I have a hard time speaking with conviction
Right.
about that if I'm not 100% on it. So
Yeah.
whenever I start yelling into the mic, it's because I'm 100%. Oh, man.
That's
But you
great.
said
Well,
something funny that, or not funny. When the day we're born, a problem in the world was solved. And what it made me think of was, I know people who would argue that the day that I was born, problems were created. uh,
How is it that they think that? What did they give you
oh,
any
I'm just
reference?
no,
Just
I'm just playing with you. We all create our own waves, and there's all plenty of people who think we bring more problems and solutions in our life. It's just funny, but
well,
I
we
agree with
do.
you.
Well, we do bring those problems to us if we resist what's happening,
Yeah.
They- to just to accept what is, to just to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can accept the acceptance of life can bring so much peace, even if you would judge it as like, oh God, I don't want this. As soon as you do that, it can become a problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you just, I want to say, let it go through you. Just
Yeah, a lot less stress living that way. I'll tell you what.
yeah, well, and thinking about Nelson talking about having, X amount of policies, I don't know what it was, 20, 30, 40, whatever, of them. What a peaceful way. No worries. I mean, that's one level of peace, but he could spend more time thinking about his creator and die before you die so you can live fully kind of thinking. He had a lot of time available because he was under nobody else's schedule, so to speak, and he could be at peace.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So just to touch back on one other thing that we were talking about, the terminology, the words that are used, absolutely important. Um, cannot stress that even anymore, and that's why I don't listen to a whole lot of IBC agents, because not all of them are using words that are accurate. And for all of our listeners, I will say, the Banking with Life podcast, they use correct terminology on that podcast all the time. They don't mess up with that one. It's super important to them. And I would even argue that the Wealth Without Bay Street is another one where they use correct terminology very frequently. So
Mm,
I haven't listened to as much of their stuff, and so I can't say 100%. But
yeah.
generally speaking, that's a solid place to get information. The best place, though, the book Becoming Your Own Banker. Man, there are no words in there that are not supposed to be in there. That man spent 20 years teaching the topic, and then wrote the book, and then rewrote it 5 times to increase its clarity. And
Mm,
you can't get a
yeah.
better source than that, man. It's really, really good. So let's hop into what does it mean when most of us think of interest growth within an IBC policy. How do life insurance policies grow? This is so fascinating to me, and it makes, when we say, if you can take the banking function into your control, whether you use whole life insurance or something else, it doesn't matter, you're going to get ahead. But the vehicle of whole life insurance outperforms everything else as it relates to the banking function. Okay, not investments, the banking function, totally different. So just to clarify really quickly on an investment, when we're talking about an investment, what we're referring to is taking money, divorcing yourself from that money, and putting it into a an entity, an investment, an asset, whatever you want to call it. It might even be a liability if you're a bad investor. But you're putting money into something else that is supposedly, you're predicting that the value of what you're putting your money into will increase in the future. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Clear? Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep. Yep.
So it is an assessment on our part based on our understanding, from whether it be our understanding of real estate, our understanding of stocks, mutual bonds, all that kind of stuff, mutual funds, sorry, bonds, we are expecting that whatever that is going to grow in the future. And as it grows, we get, that would be interest, right? And we get to experience that in the form of dividends or a return of interest. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
different weird ways to classify that.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
basically that is growing at interest. That's what a lot of us think with investments. Okay. Now, infinite banking, on the other hand, is it is taking money and putting it into an asset of whole life insurance where that asset is being capitalized. Okay. So because we still have pure, really, really, really good control of that capital, we can trade it, right? We have accessibility to it. We're not divorcing ourselves from it, and we can leverage it. I should say that's a better use of it.
Can I interrupt for
Yeah,
just
go
a
for it.
second? That word, we're not divorcing it. Well, the phrase, not divorcing it ourselves from it. That's that's very interesting. You're not when you say you're not divorcing yourself from it. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So if I was going to take money and and throw it into a real estate property, let's say
Now,
50 grand.
this is outside of an IBC policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If I was taking money from my savings account and I spent 50 grand on a down payment of a house, I would be divorcing myself from that money. I would be putting that into the bank, right, for the home, and that's no longer mine, right? I'm on the deed for the real estate. I might be able to leverage that capital that's within the, or I should say the equity, as a
The
lot of people
equity.
think of it. Yep.
Yep, yep.
Um, the equity in that home, I may be able to leverage, but I have to do it with permission from the bankers, right? So because I no longer have control of my money, it's now in the real estate. I have divorced myself from that money. On the other
Uh,
hand, if you take money and you give it to the life insurance company in exchange for a contract, and that contract says you have full control and rights over the value of the contract and you can access it whenever you want for whatever you want, it's not the same kind of divorce, right? Yes, you're giving your money over into the life insurance company. In return, they're giving you capital. One is better than the other, right? Money
uh,
is just a means of exchange. Capital is the tradable value of an asset. So if you give them money and they give you capital, you can use that and leverage that whenever you want, however you want. You haven't divorced yourself from the value of the money that you have given over to the life insurance company. Does that make sense?
why have you not divorced yourself from it?
Because you still have control of it.
So, but okay, so let's just devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
um, so, say you start this policy, and just say you're putting in $100,000 a year, and 3 years down the road, you have X amount of cash value, and you decide you're going to buy that same house that you spoke about earlier, and you ask for a loan from the insurance company because we're not taking the money out of our policy, we're
Mm-hmm.
taking it against their general fund. You take that, they give you the loan, and you give it to the bank as a down payment. I'm playing devil's advocate
Yep.
here.
What's the question?
How is that not different? Giving it to the bank as the down payment. Now you've divorced yourself of the control of that,
Right.
right?
Yep. No, you're totally accurate.
But and you also have an outstanding loan now inside the policy to pay the insurance company back. Your money is still there and it's still growing
Right.
inside your policy, but so is, should I say, the interest is the interest is going to come due on your anniversary for that
Right.
loan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is investments happen whether you start it today from your own pocket or you start it in the future from a policy that you've capitalized. Regardless, you're taking money and throwing it into an investment, right? What
Yep. Take your time.
infinite
Think about
banking? No, I appreciate it. Nelson talks about infinite banking is taking the banking function back into your life. And the reason why we would want to do that is because we finance everything already. We're already doing this. Okay. You're already going to make that investment. If you like real estate, you're going to invest in real estate. From which position would you rather invest in real estate? Do you want to invest in real estate from a position of just money in a checking account or a savings account where once it's gone, it's completely gone? Or do you want to invest in real estate from the position where you've got collateralized capital in a life insurance policy that is growing every single month, every single day? Like it's always growing, right?
it.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
there's always going to, if you're going to make an investment, whether it's from yourself or from your life insurance policy, you're going to be giving up control of that money. The IBC philosophy is when you have money in your pocket, you have to exchange it for value. Why not exchange it for really good value versus a risk? Once it's exchanged for really good value, then take it and put it in a risk, if you will, or an investment.
Yeah. Which the real estate, the house would be
Yeah, yeah,
a risk. There would be some risk there.
yeah, right.
Um, yeah.
So,
So go ahead. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Were you going to ask a question?
So you could do that. You put the down payment, and maybe it's a rental, right? And you're renting it out, and 5 years later you decide. I feel like I'm letting you off the hook here a little bit, but that you sell that house, the property has gone up in value, and because you invested in a hot market,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
down in Atlanta. So 5 years later, you take the profits from that investment. 5 years later, the house sells for, your 50,000 is back plus another 100,000, but you take the 50,000 from that 150. Say you made $150,000 profit, you put it back put the 50 back into the policy, and then you have this other profit that you could decide to make another investment with it. You can do whatever you want, but you could start another policy. Put in 10,000 a year or whatever you decide, 20,000 over the course of 5 years or whatever. And am I correct? And that's what Nelson was talking about creating a system.
Yeah, right.
Of banking. That's your branch bank.
So why would somebody want to create a system of banking? What
to control more of the banking function in their life.
Right. But why with IBC policies? Why a system of policies? I think to understand it, you have to understand how these things grow. That's my personal belief. You have to understand why they are so amazing. Now, the future, that 150,000 you were just talking about, the future profits of real estate buying, selling is market based. There's a lot of people that are living today that experienced the opposite of that back in 2008, right?
Yeah.
And plenty of other real estate recessions. There's been a lot of them. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to see interest. You're not guaranteed to see money returned on your investment. It's a really good bet to buy bonds on America's debt because that's pretty much guaranteed to go up. But very few things are are guaranteed to increase in value no matter what. And when I say no matter what, I'm talking about every day, every month, every 6 months, every year, every decade. Everything in the future, if you can't guarantee that it is going to increase in value, then it's a risk, right? That's the really cool thing about life insurance. And that's why it's not an investment, right? We're capitalizing um, we're capitalizing an asset. That asset is producing cash flow through dividends, and it gets better every single year. Um, Cash
Yeah.
value, just to be totally clear for everybody, I'm going to use a technical term. Cash value is the net present value of a future death benefit. Okay? So another way of looking at that is cash value is basically a present day reflection of a future death benefit. Now, to understand cash value and how it grows, you first have to understand PUA. PUA is paid up additional life insurance. Not every company, different companies call it different things. There's some companies that call it ALIR, additional life insurance rider. Some
Yeah.
companies call it PUA, right? All it is you're buying more death benefit. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
With
Paid
whole
up.
life,
Paid
yeah,
up.
yeah, it's paid up. So the difference between a whole life policy and paid up life insurance is a whole life policy is like a mortgage. You set up, you agree to purchase a certain value, a certain amount of death benefit over a period of time, and that period is scheduled. Whether it's a 30-year mortgage, a 15-year mortgage, that'll determine how much you're paying every single month to the balance that you owe for what you're purchasing. Okay.
Yeah.
So the paid up additional life insurance is life insurance where you pay once for the death benefit and it's completely owned. You don't owe any future payments on that. It's yours.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when you, not to switch the subject, but when you look at an illustration, you have a guaranteed column and you have a non-guaranteed. And once that dividend is paid, that actually becomes guaranteed. It's not like it's going to fall off like other dividends, like if you roll dividends
Right.
in an investment and the investment goes down, that dividend is also dropping. The value
Yeah.
of it is dropping.
Right.
But the PUA paid up edition, you're actually buying micro or smaller. So even right out of the gate, that very first year, after 1 year and your anniversary comes around, depending on how it's designed, you're going to get, $300 or $100 or whatever it is. It's a dividend, and you are buying little micro death benefits in full.
Right.
Right?
As
Yeah.
long as you buy PUA with your dividends. There's a lot of things you can do with
Yes.
dividends, but
Yes,
yes.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
that you touched on a good point there. As soon as you purchase PUA, it is yours and it's contractually yours. Let's just say you spend $10,000 on PUA this month. That might buy you, everything's based on mortality. So a really unhealthy smoker at 65 years old, it might buy $10,000 might buy you like $15,000 of death benefit. It's not very much, right? But
Right.
a younger,
But
healthier person,
someone like,
$10,000 might buy you $40,000 or
right.
$70,000 of death benefit, right?
Yeah.
And so that's all based on mortality. So I don't even want to spend too much time on that. Let's just say 10,000 buys you 40,000. Okay. If $10,000 buys you $40,000 of death benefit, the future value of your contract is $40,000. That's when you're going to die, right? You've paid $10,000 for it. Your cash value goes up by $10,000 because it was all pure, you have that equity right away.
Right.
But there's a difference there of $30,000, the future value is set. The future value of your contract is set in stone the day you pay. The future value of a real estate property is not set in stone. It never can be set in stone.
Yeah,
It's
right.
always based on market value,
Yeah.
which
Well,
generally goes up, but you don't know what it's going to go up to. And you don't even know that it's going to go up.
yes, right. Yeah, and in 2008 you saw them all go down
Well, you
drastically.
saw them all go down. I was still young.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, and I saw them before that. You know, like you mentioned earlier, that these cycles are going to happen. They're going to happen again in the future now. So
Yeah.
they always happen because they're kind of like baked into the whole system.
Oh, they are baked into the whole system. Business cycles.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's what they call them.
yeah.
Okay, so there's
So
four methods of cash value growth that I want to talk about. Four
yeah,
methods that cause cash value to grow. One of them is PUA premiums paid out of pocket. That purchases you a death benefit that is large, and a because you increased your death benefit, you also increased your cash value. Cash value is always a reflection of a death benefit. Without purchasing that extra death benefit, you don't get the cash value, right?
mm-hmm,
That's all it is. It's the
yeah,
net present value of a future death benefit. It's what you can accept, what you can access right now of a death benefit that will be paid in the future, as long as you pay your premiums and don't default on anything like that, right?
right, yeah,
So this creates a kind of a turbocharging element in the policy. A lot of whole life policies without this PUA rider, they take forever to build in value that you can actually use, because a lot of those whole life premiums are going to cost of insurance for the first few years, and
right,
just a bunch of different things, mortality costs, all of it. And it takes a long time for you to actually start using it. What the PUA does is it increases your contract value right away. As soon as you pay that, your contract value is higher, and so is your equity. You can go start using that right away. Fantastic. Turbocharges the whole thing. The second method of cash value growth is through PUA premiums purchased by dividends. Two separate categories of PUA.
yeah,
They do the same thing, but based on where the money's coming from is really important. If you
yeah,
take those dividends and you pocket them, and then you say, hey, I got $10,000 of dividends this year, I want to go put that into the dividend PUA. You can't do that because it's coming back out of your policy. It has to go from the insurance company back to the insurance company, basically.
yeah,
So you've got your PUA out of pocket, you have your PUA by dividends, and the dividends PUA is what creates the compounding growth. In the first year, you mentioned it all depends on how big the policy is. It might be
yes,
$100,
right,
$300, $1,000,
yeah,
$10,000. It totally depends. Um, but every single year going forward, it's going to get bigger.
right,
Why?
yeah,
Because as you go through time, your contract value is worth more because you're turbocharging or paying PUA out of pocket. You're increasing your contract value. And as part of a mutual life insurance company, you're a part owner of that company. Anytime you own more of a company, your dividends are bigger.
yeah,
The bigger your
yeah,
dividends are, the more PUA those are buying. So every year, because your dividends get bigger, so does the PUA um, so does the PUA premiums purchased by dividends, which just accelerates the whole thing every single year on a compounding curve.
yeah, snowballing.
Yep.
So I just want to clarify something for those that are listening, that the out of pocket dividend that you're purchasing is through the premiums you're paying. True?
Yes. Yeah. So when you
Yeah.
pay PUA out of pocket,
Well,
that,
yeah, it's part of the premium that you're
yep,
paying. Yeah. I just
right.
wanted to clarify that. So, because I had it in my head, that's what it was. And I'm like, people might not understand
Yeah.
that. So I just wanted to clarify it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got, to recap, we've got PUA premiums out of pocket. We've got PUA dividends or PUA
Dividends.
premiums that are purchased by dividends. And then we have whole life insurance premiums. Remember, if you've got a 30-year mortgage and you're paying that off every single month, every time you make a payment, you're increasing your equity within the mortgage because you have fewer payments left to make, and
Right.
eventually you're going to own that outright. Same thing with whole life. There's all different schedules that you could pick if you want to pay for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 70 years. There's all different options. Whatever you pick, as you make those payments on a monthly or annual or whatever basis, you have fewer to pay off in the future, and therefore your equity in that contract increases.
Right. Yeah.
This is the foundational stability of the entire machine. Without this element, the other things can't exist. Okay,
Yeah.
we can't buy single premium life insurance without it being treated as a taxable,
Yeah. Modified endowment contract.
Yeah, it makes the policy, which basically treats it like a 401k or any other government program, where if you use it, you're taxed like it's income, all that kind of stuff, penalized, everything.
Yeah.
So the whole life premiums, it doesn't grow very much cash value every single month or every single year whenever you pay it off, but it's very slow and steady. Every single time you make a payment, you're going to have an increase in equity, and it is the foundation. It's the stability for everything else. So that's the third method. Method. We have PUA out of pocket.
Yeah.
PUA from dividends. Whole life premiums. The fourth one. This is the kicker. Oh my gosh. Okay. Time. That's it. Time. Time increases your cash value. People are probably listening being like, how? How does that happen? Remember, okay, I haven't said it yet, so you can't remember this. At a whole life insurance policy endows or matures at age 121. At that age, your cash value must equal your death benefit. Once the policies mature, the equity has to equal the value, because there's no future value. There is no future value beyond age 121. So now the net present value of that future value has to equal at age 121. That's the contract. Yeah. It has to be that way.
And
so
you knew that the day you signed the contract, it could have been 20, 30, 40, 50 years before.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And so if your cash value has to equal your death benefit at age 121, and it incrementally increases, so it's not like it just stays the same and then increases at age 121. It's incremental. Yeah. As you get older, you get closer to age 121. Guess what? Yeah. Tomorrow you're going to be older. That means that your cash value must grow a little tiny bit to more accurately reflect the time that's left between your age and age 121. Let's back up to the PUA example. Let's say you buy $10,000 of PUA. That purchases you $40,000 of death benefit. There's a deficit of $30,000 there. Okay? That deficit that's not available to you right away in cash value as soon as you make that payment, part of that $30,000 has to become more available to you every day of your life because you're getting older.
And
that's all.
And if you do that every single year, each one of those dividend paid up are compounding on top of it.
Exactly. So let's say in year one, you pay $10,000 of cash of PUA, and that buys you $40,000. You've got $30,000 that is going to be incrementally growing, like becoming more accessible to you from now till age 121. Year two rolls around, you do another 10,000. Now, instead of 30,000 becoming incrementally more available to you, it's 60,000. and then 90,000 the following year, and then 120,000 the following year. Because you're getting older, you have more access to a value that is set in stone. That can never be taken from you. It
Right.
can't.
Yeah. Right.
It's
It's
set. It's
contractual.
guaranteed. It's contractual.
It's contractual.
What the heck? That's
Well,
insane.
that's why when you do look at an illustration, and again, we don't want to be looking at illustrations until you actually understand the concept of all of this. But when you look at the illustration and you look at year one and the growth, as opposed to year 10 or 20, look at it 20 years and you see what the premium is due, and what the cash value grew at was 100% potentially or more.
Right, but it's really easy when you're looking at those illustrations to recognize the dividends are getting a lot bigger every single year.
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
it's easy to be like, oh, well, the cash value growth in these big down, 15, 20, 30 years from now, it's so much significantly higher than the premiums paid because the dividend is also significantly higher. Two separate things. Dividends doing one thing and time is doing the other. Both are causing compounding growth. Now, this is not interest. Okay? I cannot stress that enough. This growth is not interest, because that's money that you get from an investment increasing in value. The value of the asset is set in stone. You're just having more access to that value every single year.
The asset, when you talk about the asset you're talking about right now is the whole life policy, as opposed to a real estate building or
correct
home.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because we jump back and forth.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So your whole life, your death benefit is set in stone. It's just that you have, because you're getting older, because of all these other things, you're increasing your access to that capital or to that cash value.
Yeah. And the word asset, right? What is an asset? An asset is putting money in your pocket, right?
Right.
And the home could be too. The real estate investment might have a positive cash flow. Like you were saying earlier, if you're a good investor, that's what you're doing.
Right.
The opposite would be true, that if you bought a house and it was costing you more money, you had to keep putting in every month because the rent didn't cover it.
Right.
That would be a liability.
Mm-hmm.
So, to distinguish between the two, liability and asset, but also between an asset as the policy and an asset as a home investment. Right. And that these policies are literally assets, and you can easily see it because there are groups and organizations that actually will buy your policy. That's a whole other subject.
Yeah, but at this, be careful with that, because there's also groups and organizations that'll buy liabilities from you too, right? So just because people are willing to buy something from you doesn't make it an asset necessarily.
Well, I guess if it's something that you could literally pull money from, the growth, just say you decided not to put that dividend back into the policy to buy PUAs, and you had it sent to yourself, mm-hmm. right? Or even just a portion of it, because you have the basis, whatever. You have that, you have the whole basis amount to consider also. But say your agent said, well, if you pulled this much, you could probably do that for the rest of your life. That would be considered an asset.
I completely agree. And then there's some people out there that would say, if you're taking your dividends and you're wrapping them back into the contract, then it's not actually putting money in your pocket, so it's not considered an asset, or it's not cash flowing or whatever. Yeah. Here's my question to those people. If you have pure contractual guaranteed access to that money, doesn't matter if it hits your savings pocket or your banking pocket, it's generating money that's coming back into your control. Your control. That's what matters. When we're putting money in our pocket, we're talking about putting money into your control. That's what's
right,
happening within the IBC policy.
right, right,
Stinking
right.
awesome,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. That's uh, the what was I going to say? The certainty of it,
Mm-hmm.
that is happening inside the policy and having access to it, and it's contractual and all that. That you've signed up for it, and you know where you're headed
Yeah.
with that home that you're investing in. You just hope the music doesn't stop while you're in it.
Right. Right. And that's why you capitalize with an IBC policy first, and then you go do the other stuff, because an
Right.
IBC policy isn't a great, it's not an investment, and it's not going to produce you a great um, return on investment, as our listeners would probably like to classify it, as most of us classify it.
Yeah.
It's not growing your money significantly for a while, right? So if you have another investment that you want to make, go do it, but do it out of your IBC policy rather than in your pocket, so that you're leveraging an asset that's growing, and it continues to grow while you're using that money in this other investment.
Yeah. And that's why we talk about it being a foundational piece to your portfolio.
Right.
Right.
It's a
Making
solid
it.
solid
Yeah.
place to launch off of, to go
Yeah.
do all the other things that you were going to do. I was talking to somebody about that, and I was like, you could build a mansion, right? Let's just say that mansion has like 15 walls on it, all different, angles and everything. It's beautiful. People love to come see. This is your financial mansion, right? You've
Yeah.
got this business, that business, this investment, and it all comes together to be this really beautiful piece that is it's amazing, right? And it's producing you a lot of cash flow. What happens when something shakes, you know, and those walls, let's just say two or three of those walls come crashing down. If two or three of those walls come crashing down, and they were helping support the whole thing just because everything's built together, right?
Yeah.
Then the whole mansion is unstable. IBC is not one of those walls. It's not something that you get to see. It's not something that's beautiful and fun to look at, right? Infinite banking is just the foundation. It's the
Yeah.
concrete. It's the
Yeah.
rebar. It's
It's
everything that
not
you.
that exciting.
No, it's not. But because if you secure everything to that foundation, who cares if one or two of those walls fall off? Everything's not the walls aren't secured to one another as much as they're secured to the foundational piece
Yeah.
of infinite banking. Rebuild that
Yeah.
other wall. Who cares?
Yeah. So I say that it's not that exciting until you get out a number of years. Then it can get a little exciting.
Yeah.
Those first startup years, 1 through 3 or 1 through 5, whatever it turns out to be for you.
Some
It
people
doesn't.
it's 1 through 10.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I started mine last year at 67 years old, I did it. My strategy was I wanted to get as much death benefit as I could right out of the gate. And so I designed it as that in that way.
Right.
I still have a PUA rider, but it's not as much as I would potentially do for a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old even.
Right.
Because even those 10 years, and I guess I want to make the point too that at 67 years old, I started it for the death benefit, but also for a place to park my money.
Mm-hmm.
To watch it grow, because it does, and yeah. So anyway.
Yep. Well, man, we've been talking. This is an hour and
Uh,
20 minutes long.
oh wow.
I know. It's amazing
Okay.
how much time just flies by.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we covered a lot of stuff. We covered grounding. Well, I didn't actually talk much about red light therapy.
Yeah, we talked about being at peace with what is. We talked about,
Yeah,
you mentioned nothing's permanent. We talked a little bit
yeah.
about health, being grounded, banking, interest, words have meaning, IBC terminology, how cash value grows. Yeah, we talked about a whole ton of stuff today.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your insight. I was definitely the student today. that you brought so much clarity to this. Yeah, just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it brings clarity to other folks. And if it doesn't, here's what I'll say: read Becoming Your Own Banker again. And I tell every one of my clients this because becoming your own banker establishes a proper vocabulary to understand what's really going on. And if you don't understand the vocabulary in there, look up the words, look up what's going on. And it's not like it's that complicated, but he uses the appropriate words at the appropriate time to explain everything. And that can, until we have a accurate understanding of the words that are used, it's difficult to understand what is being communicated.
Yeah, right.
So,
And I would also just add that if you have that hint in your mind that you're not quite sure about, you think you know what that word means, but I wonder if it means something else. Go look it up.
yeah.
Go look it up so you can get real clarity. And if it was something that somebody told you, this is what it means, probably even more of a reason to go look it up.
Yeah. And also if you're looking for additional clarity or anything, we've got our information here in the show notes. You're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
shore up some of those areas that you're looking for.
yeah. And please do subscribe and like and share the video. As Kyle has mentioned, there even amongst NNI practitioners, there's some misunderstandings. So anyway, but thanks, Kyle. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
bringing in the clarity.
absolutely. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right, take care.
Thank you for joining us on the Sound Banking Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on the notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for more content.